Okay, so as I said, my name's Danny. I'm a trainee ACP in ED, and my quality improvement project centred on fluid balance in sepsis management. It's something that I'd observed directly, particularly when working in resus. So a little bit of background and rationale. Sepsis is a widely known life-threatening condition, and the UK Sepsis Trust 2024 estimates that 200,000 people in the UK are treated for sepsis every year, resulting in 48,500 deaths, with suggestion that uncoded cases account for an actual attendance figure closer to 1.5 million. With the correct use of Sepsis 6 bundles, it is estimated that a total of £170 million could be saved by the NHS each year, along with saving 10,000 lives. However, compliance remains poor within the UK. Reductions in urine output can be significant in identifying the first stages of hypoperfusion and end organ damage. Therefore, it is critical in the management of sepsis to recognise relative hypovolemia and the requirement for fluid resuscitation. Aiming to avoid under-resuscitation efforts and fluid overload, both of which are associated with poorer outcomes. The UK Sepsis Trust 2024 also highlights that low urine output is a primary criteria for initiating fluid challenges, underlining its clinical value not just as a marker of severity, but as a modifiable risk factor in early management. Therefore, NICE 2024 makes the recommendation that continuous or half-hourly monitoring of urine output is vital in patients at high risk of deterioration due to sepsis. However, data collected at the start of this project from the sepsis audit within ED demonstrates that compliance with a documented fluid balance in sepsis is less than 20%, with arguments that this could be a direct reflection on wider figures nationally. Therefore, the initial aim of this project was to improve the accuracy, consistency, and compliance with fluid balance monitoring in sepsis patients in ED. So in the context of improving fluid balance monitoring in septic patients, being clear about what the in-scope and the out-scope was ensured that the project remained achievable and focused. Defining scope helped everyone to understand exactly what the project was aiming to improve, with strict inclusion and exclusion criteria. Without it, projects drift into scope creep, where more and more issues get added, making the project unmanageable. When scope is well defined, it's easier to set specific measurable outcomes. I found that staff were more likely to engage if they could see that the project set clear boundaries and didn't overwhelm them with unrealistic goals and the risk of failure and sustainability. By concentrating on a high-risk group initially, it prevented the project from becoming too diluted by attempting to improve hydration monitoring across all patient groups, which would require significantly more resources and would make measurement less reliable. We were able to audit this by identifying a news of over 5 and patients that were confirmed as having sepsis. Ultimately, this focused approach supported measurable improvements in sepsis care, aligning with the Sepsis 6 priorities, and provided a solid foundation for future scale-up if successful, and strengthening the evidence for whether the change had actually worked. So with the help from Kate and Heather, thank you, a qualitative questionnaire was circulated to all ED staff to gain insight into whether the project would be of value. 91% of respondents identified that they knew where the input for fluid balance was, and a further 91% agreed that the icon is easy to find. So why was it still not being utilised and continually missed? The biggest limitations were explored, along with ways in which the current process could be improved, aligning with initial thoughts prior to the project commencing. These were to include pop-ups or prompts, simplifying the process, and teaching and awareness, with 91% of respondents agreeing that teaching around fluid balance would be of benefit within ED. The most prominent answer identified for why it is missed was that it is not a priority, which shows that more needs to be done for this to be seen as a priority when treating septic patients. However, some good areas were identified as to why fluid balance is important. So, all of the recommended tools were utilised. However, the most useful in identifying root cause analysis have been demonstrated on this slide. The SIPOC tool provided a high-level overview of the current processes. This made it clear where documentation practices began to break down, and when paired with a flow chart, highlighted areas of waste and duplication within the existing fluid balance monitoring pathway. This was particularly important in recognising that while documentation was occurring, it was often inconsistent or incomplete, impacting the accuracy of sepsis management. The fishbone diagram enabled a deeper exploration of potential contributing factors. It broadened the scope by considering not only in-departmental processes, but also pre-hospital influences, such as the accuracy of paramedic documentation and timeliness of handover. This was crucial in understanding that effective fluid resuscitation relies on seamless information transfer from pre-hospital to the hospital setting. Finally, the driver diagram allowed the identification of primary and secondary drivers that could influence improvement. This visual tool helped prioritise interventions such as streamlining the IT template, reinforcing staff training, and improving integration with the sepsis screening tool. By linking potential changes directly to the overarching aim, it provided clarity on how targeted actions could lead to measurable improvements in both efficiency and patient safety. Initiation of a fluid balance QI group aided with the development of change ideas and the allocation of tasks, which led to the formulation of a SMART goal statement and what we really wanted to achieve. And within that, it was to improve compliance for sepsis. Sorry, lost my train. Improve compliance for suspected septic patients from less than 20% to over 40%. This then led to the Symphony user group meeting and formal approval being granted for the proposed change, with identifiable benefits to better patient outcomes, implement a simplified automated process for inputting fluid balance, and improved standards aligning with national protocols. Unfortunately, the initial idea could not be implemented without incurring extra cost due to the data collection form running behind the Symphony interface and being controlled by an external company. However, following the initial data gathering phase, it showed positive impacts that fluid balance compliance improved to 45% just with increased awareness. This highlighted that even small targeted changes could have a measurable impact on practice. Collaboration with the IT systems manager proved vital, and a practical solution was developed in the form of a pop-up reminder for staff to complete the fluid balance input, along with an investigation request within Symphony that wasn't there before. Additionally, a timer function was introduced to prompt timely completion within the hour, reinforcing the importance of early and accurate documentation. And I found that staff have appreciated this and its visibility. To sustain these improvements, teaching sessions will be implemented to ensure that staff are both confident in using the tool and are aware of its significance in the context of sepsis. Emphasising the link between accurate fluid balance monitoring and improved patient outcomes will help embed these practices into everyday workflow. Encouragingly, the latest Sepsis 6 pathway dashboard has already demonstrated a marked improvement in documentation compliance within the golden hour, reflecting progress towards safer and more effective sepsis management, as well as a general consensus of pride on the shop floor. Upon reflection, the QI course has been highly beneficial in equipping me with both the theoretical framework and practical tools to drive meaningful change. It's enabled me to approach challenges systematically, engage key stakeholders effectively, and identify pragmatic solutions when initial plans encountered barriers. Most importantly, it's reinforced the value of structured improvement methodology in achieving sustainable change, leaving me more confident in leading future projects that directly enhance patient safety and quality of care, which is something that I've not done before.